You are about to enter the world of Laura Eisenhower. And if you know the work of Laura, you know how intense that can be. This is probably my third or fourth interview with Laura, and she never ceases to amaze me with all of the knowledge that she has acquired and has been so diligent in sharing with the world. Now, I'm going to give you one little disclaimer, caveat. It's a little heavy, for the venue that we're on. So we had to. I had to indulge her though because I wanted to really, really have her get into the full story of what we're talking about. The question that I posed to her, and you will soon see, has to do with the nature of the false matrix that we may indeed be living in, and also alien abduction within the context of that. But of course, as with Laura, she does not stop there. We're going to go deep diving into the world of false identity and false agenda and what we need to do to get out of that, what we need to do to ultimately heal. What do we need to do to ultimately, as they say, ascend? So without further ado, let's listen in to my interview with Laura Eisenhower. Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Higher Journeys. And of course, if it's your first time here, I welcome you. I'm your host, Alexis Brooks, and I am joined once again with someone who I always love sharing the stage with, and that is none other than Laura Eisenhower. Laura, thank you for joining me today once again.
Great to see you, Alexis. Thanks for having me.
Always good to see you. Well, listen, guys, we're going to dive right into a subject that I love listening to Laura discuss, and it's complex. It has to do with what she has referred to as a false matrix. But I want to add another layer to this, Laura. I want to talk about this sort of false paradigm, what you've also called phantom matrix, and how it relates possibly to the alien abduction phenomenon. Two very, very obviously controversial issues, but two realities that I think many, particularly watching this show, would agree are happening to some degree. Let's start with the question: what is a false matrix as opposed to a regular matrix?
It has a lot to do with the planetary grid network and how that's been manipulated, and things that took place after the Atlantean cataclysms that, really changed the nature of how we incarnate with just like so much amnesia and junk DNA and just the loss of our galactic memories. Like what happened? So there's dark technologies that have been placed in the planetary grid network to create like reversals, and reversals are all about unplugging that electric and magnetic energy of the masculine and feminine,
Mm-hmm.
and distorting it so that we're out of balance. So when we look at like patriarchy or patriarchal agenda
Mm-hmm.
and the manipulation of like the Saturn and moon, like Saturn moon matrix, dark technologies, and how these planetary systems have been just messed with and infiltrated. I mean, it goes way beyond just what we see as bioweapons or weaponry. It goes way back into our ancient and galactic history. So it's a very complex, in-depth, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the manipulation of the planetary grid network really affects all evolution of life on the planet. And so it's really based on harvesting and siphoning energies and infecting our creative channels with psyops and propaganda and indoctrination so that we are participating and enabling a false matrix, in the sense that what we're being thrown from the outside world becomes what we view as reality, and we invest in it. We form a dependency bond with it, and this has been going on for a really long time, that we forget that, wow, we're actually participating in a future that we really don't need to, because it is artificial
Mm-hmm.
versus organic ascension and the true planetary grid network, which is being repaired, just like our DNA within ourselves is being repaired and upgraded. When we can like move away from that and recognize the distraction, and inversions that like to yank us into, then we can be on the trajectory of something much greater. And alien abductions and just the presence of these sort of groups here play a part in manipulating humanity in this sort of mind control loop.
Right, right. That's a lot. And you're right. It's very complex, Laura. And so many people have been trying to unravel those, of course, that are aware that something is completely inorganic and has been for a very long time. I want to read a quote, actually from a presentation that Laura gave, maybe back in 2020, Laura, that you did for Portal to Ascension. It was a great lecture. But I want to quote directly from that presentation where you said, the dark factions timeline jump in order to continue existing without having to pass through the gates of destruction and recreation. This is because they were created through technology, not the divine creative force of existence. End quote. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Timeline jump.
Yeah, well, when you avoid death and you utilize technology to trick sort of the death process, then you're not going through what a soul would go through in order to face just your karma, and karma being correction, right? Like, where have you been out of balance? Like, what lessons do you need to learn or go through in order to just advance yourself as a soul? If you're avoiding all of that and you're weaponizing humans and using them to just make a mess of things on the planet, just you know it's a completely different sort of life cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole idea of people consenting to this agenda is where they feel that, if you're agreeing to it, then that's on you, not them. And if they can master tricking the whole death process, then we are like looping within their matrix underneath this sort of net that they're controlling. So they can engineer and grow humans like in underground bases, and hybridize and breed through these sort of abductions, and like utilize this technology to download their consciousness into like a new body, so that particular agenda or that being carries on,
Right.
without actually physically dying. So they want to sort of cheat death, rewrite history, jump timelines, and monitor the timelines, and use tactics to sort of look into the future and see where humanity is going to advance itself in order to be able to step in and hijack and pull the carpet from underneath us through what we see in like the world events. And in doing that, we are giving our power to them, because they're vampiric and parasitic, and they need a host, as they also want to depopulate and get it down to a number, the smaller number of people to be able to easily manage. And this is just sort of how they cheat death. It's sort of like artificial immortality, and using all these different initiations to gain sort of like knowledge and occult knowledge, but in a sort of dark and inverted way, to exploit instead of help awaken and enlighten, so that they can be in charge and in control, and dupe us out of our own birthright and our own process of awakening that's very organic and connected to the planetary system repairing itself and its grid network from all these invasions from fallen beings. So it's a very interesting planet as far as just how it's wanting to just like take over and separate us from nature, so that we move into a more transhumanism, artificial intelligence, separation from our soul matrix, so that that we're empty vessels that are just enslaved even further into just serving whatever they want in order to maintain power and control.
Right. And survival. Wouldn't it be fair to say? I want to show you a clip that we did with Darryl Anka, who, of course, channels Bashar, having to do with the survival of their own species. Now, again, I know that there are multi-layers to this, but Laura, I want you to watch this and maybe comment on your thoughts on what Darryl had to say about the this aspect that's going on. Watch this real quick, and we'll talk on the back end.
The Greys are not aliens. They're mutated humans from a parallel version of Earth that destroyed their version of Earth to the point where they had to go underground. They mutated Their eyes got bigger to see in the dark and all this kind of stuff, but they had to mutate to survive. They tried cloning themselves to save their civilization, and that didn't work. Over generations, things started failing. They knew that they were basically in the process of dying out. So what they knew they needed to basically perpetuate their civilization was viable human DNA, which didn't exist anymore in their reality. But they used their advanced technology to tunnel into parallel realities, to shift into parallel worlds like ours, parallel versions of Earth that exist simultaneously with theirs, where viable human DNA was still existing. And to use that DNA through the abduction experiences to create hybrid beings from their DNA and our DNA so that their civilization would continue, would survive. So the hybrid civilizations, like Bashar's people, are actually the result of those abduction experiences and the perpetuation of their culture. But sort of as a payback for the use of that DNA, the hybrids, now like Bashar, are sharing information with us in our reality so that we might not necessarily have to go down the same destructive path that the Greys went down as humans on their version of Earth, because they recognize that we're doing many of the same things that led to the destruction of that parallel version
Indeed.
of Earth.
So there's a lot that Darryl said. Are you there, Laura? You're
Yep.
frozen. Okay, you're frozen, but we can still hear you. Yeah, listen, I'm gonna stop by saying to the audience, we have had kind of a Mercury retrograde of a time of this, even though it's not Mercury retrograde. There you are, you're back. I can't even tell you the glitches that have happened. No surprise when we're having a conversation like this, Laura Eisenhower, that there may be some gremlins in the mix. So we'll carry on. Okay. Let's talk about what Darryl had to say. I think that there are some synergies in the idea of, look, the bottom line is it seems that the human race has played an integral role in their needs, let's say, whoever they may be. And I want to get into that. He's, of course, talking about the Greys, but you've talked about other entities as well. So what were your thoughts on what Darryl had to say?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what's going on. I mean, we're being faced with the same kind of thing where humans are being genetically modified to become like a drone body that appears exactly like an EBE or a gray alien worker. And these biological drone bodies are without gender, without genitals. They can't reproduce, without human intuitive or, the emotional sensory abilities. And so they're unable to enjoy what we as humans enjoy, like bonding through love and connecting with empathy and compassion and being able to mate. I mean, it's just so all the different tactics that we're seeing on the planet right now, the gender reversal agenda and just what people are putting into their bodies is like all a part of that agenda. And this over the course of time does create what we know of as like an EBE or a gray that really isn't a real extraterrestrial. And so the abductions have to do with gaining genetic material or hybridizing in order to make those corrections. And so we're seeing so many different aspects of the timeline play out where we're not really dealing with linear time. We're dealing with different species and different humans that are trying to recover or rehabilitate from what has taken place previous, while we're also being presented with choices that could take us down that same trajectory that lead to, these scenarios where, humans are being abducted. And some is for the restoration and the healing in order to return to the soul matrix. And some is to continue to, implant and mind control and compromise that individual so that it is an automation and it is in a drone body that can be easily controlled. But later on down that timeline, when that species realizes the ramifications or what it agreed to and consented to or was tricked into, that's where we can look at the bigger picture and be very, very careful so that we don't go down that same road. Because it will ultimately correct itself, but why, we're here right now? Why repeat that? Why stay looping in this, same, sort of scenario? So, I mean, isn't Bashar like Essassani, which is like gray hybrid?
That's how he describes him, or Bashar. Yeah, that's how he's described.
Yeah, and that is the healing of that species, right?
Mhm.
To be able to return to, the human self instead of be tricked out of it. And this is what society is trying to do. And it's indoctrinating our kids to, and parents to, like really agree to this. And yeah, other systems in the galactic bigger picture scheme of things have faced, similar things that have come to warn us and help us understand.
Mhm. Here we are in 2024, Laura, we're still in first quarter, about to enter second. If you were to look back in time, did you think that we would be where we are for better or worse right now, or let's say 4 years ago, right? Where are we in terms of your expectation? Is it playing out the way you saw it 4 years ago? What are your thoughts on the trajectory, I guess, generally speaking?
Well, I've always been warning about the New World Order agendas back in 2010. And I knew there would be a showdown of forces, that we would have to face all of this. It's not like they're just going to stop, like, oh, people are awakening. Okay, all right, we're just going to just like get out of here. I know that there was a outer barrier with the assistance, with the Guardians put this outer barrier around the planet in 2014. This connects back to Eisenhower's administration, a lot of the positive military that he established, his relationship with Val Thor to petition the Guardians to assist us in these times, which is very much this, greater ascension window period. So inevitably that would have come about, but on an Earth level, what were the mechanisms that needed to be put in place to help facilitate this? That connects with the Great Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
So I always knew that, yeah, we're going to have to duke it out. We're going to have to move through a very, very dense layer. How is that going to play out? Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were talking about all the different possibilities, myself included, calling out the fact that our skies are being sprayed and GMOs and smart cities and, what mechanisms are they going to use? Things like false alien invasions and using, these dark technologies, false disclosure, false ascension narratives to, lead people astray, because they knew all this was coming. But knowing that the looking glass technology and a lot of what they were using to see into the future in order to manipulate it and hijack it, they weren't able to see past a certain point, like 2012. This is really a period where, if we can break free from the mind control, we can, manifest the future that we want to see. So the hard step that is confronting people is, can you begin to remove yourself from the dependency bond with the system that is just only the last tactic it really has is to trick you, and how that infects the mind and kind of overtakes the nervous system and overrides our ability to have critical thinking and intuition and sovereignty and access to our creative imagination, that we have to just stand strong and protecting and shielding from all these assaults and attacks. But the thing is, as far as the trajectory of the planetary system, the greater cosmic intelligence and everything that it is doing, it's ascending and we are with it. So we just have to not get yanked into their their final death throes of not wanting to lose the grip on the loosh they need and and what they want to feed from us in order to remain alive, because that is their life cycle, is vampiric. And again, some that have been duped into it are trying to rescue and rehabilitate their species through the higher guidance of some of these more benevolent groups, because ultimately we're all one. We've all kind of split and fractured from the cosmic trinity, and nature knows to repair itself. But
Right. You've mentioned that. Yes, indeed.
yeah, but we don't want to go further into the damage and into the wound and into the traumas and into the assimilation into the AI while we can, before we have to just untangle ourselves. And we have all the information we could possibly need to be well prepared. And as uncomfortable as it is for people to wrap their head around this stuff, it's a necessity right now to
absolutely.
It.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another clip I want to show you, Laura, that I think plays beautifully into the conversation that we're having. But you just made a reference to trauma. And I know that you've talked about family trauma and family lineage, and how we, as a reincarnating species, carry that trauma throughout generations. And the fact that we're carrying that trauma, having these what we call perhaps karmic wounds, perhaps helps to perpetuate the matrix-like aspect of where we are and how this is going down. What would your thoughts be on that, and what would be the antidote to that?
Well, they want to create trigger events constantly to just play into those traumas, those unhealed wounds. That's why people take everything personally, and there's so much more divide and conquer and just a lot of false movements that people attach themselves to because they're addressing, a trauma that they can't quite put their finger on. But if it's being presented, through just a movement or a trigger event, they can, they'll glom onto it and just feel like, okay, this is how I'm tending to that wound, when really it's getting them further enmeshed into an infection and into a takeover. Because really we just have to be transparent. We have to look honestly at these wounds and turn it into wisdom, turn it into like, okay, well, let's unify. Let's come together and see where we've been mind controlled or pushed into victim consciousness, or triggered into, this, reaction sort of scenario that isn't allowing us to fall back on ourselves a little bit and go through that dark night of the soul and mature ourselves and like rehabilitate, like, together and recognizing our true history and facing the rewritten history and the root of all these world wars and what our galactic history and ancient history, which has been buried. What does that really hold for us? Can we dig, deeper in the face of these wounds and reclaim ourselves and have it initiate us into a great healing and transformation? Or are we just going to be victimized and just almost validated for these wounds to the point where we are pushing it onto others and having them have to placate it, and just all the, it's just everything's being weaponized. Like we need to face these wounds to heal, but they know that we're in this huge healing, process. So how can they, disrupt it so that it gets messier and more complicated than actually beneficial? So that's up to us and the great healers and, truthers out there. And we just have to really stand strong and pull our kids out of this indoctrination and this next level assault. To just be able to come together and rehabilitate and recover from the thousands of years of tremendous abuse.
Thousands of years. Well, that brings me to another point. This is gnawing at me. Laura, when we think about Homo sapiens sapien and our capability of recall, not just in this lifetime, but perhaps infinite lifetimes that we've had, can we assume that there was a time when we were not under the thumb of the system of this false matrix, where there was, as in the movie The Matrix, where I can't remember the character that said, 100% human, where we were 100% human and the planet was 100% organic? That had to exist at some point. And if so, is there a memory, deep-seated memory within us that can potentially be resurrected?
Yes, absolutely. It's just deep within our soul, and we have to take the time to be able to listen. And the way the system is set up is to not give us that sort of time. When we look at the 9 to 5, and if something comes up, anxiety or depression, you instantly go and try and medicate it with pharmaceuticals or just make it go away like there's something wrong. It's shutting all that down is where the problem is, because all of those feelings take us on a journey. They help us to see our deeper soul calling when we begin to ask questions like, why are you angry? Why are you depressed? When you really give yourself the time and the respect to understand the root of it, you begin to find your truth. You begin to find your soul calling, and you begin to, tend to that, and then stand strong in honoring that and standing in your power and your truth, and not consenting or compromising yourself. And letting those outer projections define and diagnose you in a way that, really just complicates your brain, and it just doesn't let you heal at all. It's absolutely artificial form of
Band-Aid solution.
Healing. You're giving your power away. You're not getting to know yourself in the face of, your body and your emotions and your mind and your higher intelligence trying to like get your attention, like listen to me. But instead it's like, no, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I need to take this medicine so I can continue to, do what the matrix asked me to do. So that is key, is to be very present with ourselves, to dive deep into, what is trying to show us. And that's what my book is about. Like, instead of just allowing, people to be like, oh yeah, you're crazy, you need to, this is what we need to do. I'm like, I'm just out of here. I'm going to go on a road trip and get the F out of here, so I can just listen to myself and understand myself, so I can recover these ancient memories and just like this deeper part of who I am.
Right.
And yes, it has been thousands and thousands of years of this level of manipulation. And going all the way back to Lyra, that system, was attacked. So, it's really this, greater experience on a soul level of what are we going to do with choice and free will? Are we going to be service to self, service to others? We're going to have all these different experiences and experience light and dark, and play many different, roles in our soul experience. Can we get in touch with that? Can we consolidate all of that and find our wholeness again? Because really this is repair work. We're integrating all these fragments. We're repairing our 12-strand DNA, and we all hold different pieces in order to be able to do that. That's what unity consciousness is. But they're trying to pit us against each other and create this divide, when diversity and harmony is true oneness. The 7 root races and 5 cloister races that came into this system, is to be able to do this repair work. But it's been attacked with genocide. It's been attacked with holocausts and cataclysms and world wars. And so, we're all just like super traumatized, but we're not understanding like the hidden hand behind all of this,
right,
that has perpetuated it in order to keep us in this artificial system.
Wow. When you think about how unrelenting all of these things have been throughout human history, within the context that you're talking about, is it any wonder no one should question the fact that this has been some sort of a plan for a very, very long time. Let me go ahead and actually I'm gonna play a clip for you. But before I do, I also want to mention, guys, of course, we're going to go to the after show. Listen, I'm always talking about the after show, but I really want to bring this up now, Laura, because what I would like to talk about over in the after show, we're not there yet, but to talk about when it comes to the repair, the healing, what is it that we can do as individuals, but also helping the collective make that final, pass through into getting on the other side of this a better society and a better individual. So we are going to talk, if you're willing, I'd like to talk about that in the after show, because I think that's very important. But let's do this. Let's go ahead and play this clip. This is a clip that if you watch the show, you've probably seen this interview before. If not, of course, we'll have a link for it, having to do with somebody that may have witnessed a simulated reality, our reality, simulated or not. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at this.
I was watching the waves come in and crash, and then another one came in, and then another, and it didn't quite crash. It just stopped, and everything stopped. Everything froze, and I looked down a little bit where my knees and feet were, where the sand was. I had my feet in the sand, and I could see a very faint light green, bluish green, very light, almost like a faint laser that made a grid-like pattern from where I was all the way through the sand, all the way through the water, through the wave that was still completely frozen in place, through as far back as I could see in the horizon, and then all the way up. And that's when I started following the lines. And it was just like a grid, perfect squares. And I started to look and see if I could see, how far does this go? Like, where does it end? Does it end at the water? No, it goes past the water. Does it end? It goes as far as the horizon, but it didn't end at the horizon. It went up and up and up. And so I start looking up, and as I look up, I can see every star that's ever been there. It felt like stars were moving out of the way so that I could see more stars that were behind them. And I could see, I felt like the feeling the thought that I had in the aftermath processing this was that it felt like if you had a computer program that was like like a CAD design, like something that you were building. You're a really great graphic designer, and you're making, like, I don't know, you're doing Lord of the Rings, and it's all computer generated, and you're doing Gollum, right? And you have to, before you put the face on it, you have to build sort of the framework of him. You have to build. It looks kind of grid-like, but it kind of takes shape. I felt like I was seeing the like you were peeling back several layers of the universe, and I was seeing the base layer, and the base layer was a grid. And I said afterwards, I think we're in a simulation.
What did you think of that?
Yeah, well, we're in a simulation. I mean, our DNA is connected to the planetary grid network. And so what is junk DNA? Junk DNA is infiltrated with the simulation. The rings of Saturn and how that impacts the moon, and the artificial components of all that are beaming into us a false reality that we have to break through, because there's fences and seals in our DNA that are preventing us from accessing the full, expression. So gatekeepers and obstacles come along our path in order to bust through it. And in doing that, in the outer world, as we face it, we're doing that in our internal world by understanding that, wow, okay, that outer authority gatekeeper block is not something we have to answer to. It's an obstacle that we need to like fly over and overcome, and learn how to, jump over and be that spiritual athlete. That's like, okay, that's a barrier. I'm not going to get stuck. I'm not going to hit my head and turn the other way and comply to it or consent to that, outer authority, or be victimized by it. You leap over it, or you bust through it and dissolve it. And in this year of the dragon, you blow fire on it and you burn it down so that you can move through it and access these other layers. And the thing is, we do all the time, but humans are very compartmentalized. They're over here, but they're living a contradictory human life. They have that awareness. They're awakening, or they see this larger picture, but their life still is not fully embodying it. So you got to be willing to make the changes in your life so that your life reflects back to you the changes that are happening within you, so that you can experience it in the human realm. And yes, we get triggered into survival, our root chakra survival. What about that paycheck? Or it's like you're cutting cords with that dependency bond, similar to what it's like when you break free of an ex that is abusive and is harming you, and you see the red flags, you ignored the red flags, and now you're finally like, okay, enough is enough. But it's very daunting to say, all right, I'm going to move on. You feel lost for a while. You don't really know who you are, but then you begin to realize, oh my gosh, it's a breath of fresh air. You're finally just, noticing yourself again, and the synchronicities that are supporting your greater growth. And then you just move out of the simulation, or everything that is targeting our self-esteem, where we give our power away, where we play small and answer to something that knows better than us, and we know we're worth a lot more. And everything with the planetary alignments is helping us to deconstruct and rebuild on our own terms, based in like, what is your truth, and being as real and genuine with ourselves as we possibly can is what is going to help us to rebirth and rise above, no matter how daunting it is. Whatever identity crisis you might have, it's like, what is your true identity? That's your truth.
Right.
It's not something you have to believe in or adopt from external. It's something that you're going to find, within, because the simulation is just giving us a version of reality that's an imitation version, that's leveraging the natural progression and growth periods and initiations that the planetary alignments facilitate for us as humans to do this repair work. But it gives us the imitation version in an inverted way that is the false reality. And then we carry false personas. And then we are just being guided by artificial intelligence instead of divine wisdom. And the more assimilated we get into it, the more we lose our soul matrix, and the more we end up being genetically modified into a gray form. It's just like, with the, yeah.
So
that, I don't know that.
Wow. Well, it's a lot. As always, Laura, your answers are just so full and multidimensional, literally, which is helpful. And thankfully people can go and hit the pause button and think about what Laura said and assimilate that and come back. And yes, but it's very important. Now, look, you're talking about the antidote for this simulation, this false matrix that we have been born into repeatedly. And I look at, do you know Charlie Robinson, the gentleman that we just heard from? Are you familiar with his work?
I know.
Yeah, he's done some great work. But it would seem to me, Laura, well, I have a question and a comment. The comment is, it would seem to me that after his being afforded the opportunity to see something like this. And I won't go into what led to it. We'll have a link so you can watch the whole episode. But bottom line is, he was in a state where he saw it. His life became what you're talking about now. He got a reminder, a push through seeing through this veil of what's really going on and how it works. And so he was incented to start to explore deeper and do something about it. Not everybody is going to be able to see that net. Why do you think he was afforded the opportunity? And others have talked about it too, to see it.
Just, yeah, the willingness. If you're born with just a mission and it's really strong in your soul, you're going to just see through things. You're just going to bust through it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a part of a slow grooming process, especially, after the Second World War, just all the different MK Ultra projects and the false media and indoctrination in our schools have slowly been grooming people to consent to globalism and transgender, which is not, something to fear, because there is a legit part of that, but where is it being thrust upon, children, creating confusion that shouldn't be there, because a small part of the population will feel into that. And that is something that is to be embraced and understood. But where are these things, being, pushed upon a person to the point where their creative energy is being infected, their minds are being, overtaken. There's some that are strong enough to just, be able to see through that. And you got to give yourself the time and space to see through it and notice what is coming up in you. And not shove it back down and not dismiss it.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention to it, write it out, like find somebody, that you can talk to. It's really hard for kids, because your parents are going to make these decisions for you along the way. And, it can get really difficult. So the parents really need to wake up to be able to guide their children. But if you find that, you don't have that kind of parent, or a parent has a kind of child that you can't kind of wake up and they're being indoctrinated and you feel like you're losing them to the system, I mean, it gets really complicated. So the thing is, we just have to continue to be a resource. We have to continue to, look at, what are you being called to do? Is it create a healing center? Is it to work with certain techniques and tools and modalities that help a person to begin to, break free of that, so that is another option instead of, going to that psychiatrist to put your kids on drugs? Can you go somewhere where you can you have that, child or yourself, probe into, what's coming up for you to begin to just move away, the parts of yourself that are blocking you from getting to the root of all of it. And this is what ancestral healing is all about. When couples come together, you're not just here to emulate what was shown to you on TV or what your parents showed you. You're here to really clear ancestral patterns, to really look at the dysfunctions and the wounds and the traumas and the stereotypes and projections and unravel it, and it's being soul centered, looking more to each other on a soul level than, operating from, just these conditioned responses and triggers.
Right.
Let's dig deeper. So some it comes more natural to, and others are going to manifest disease and injury in their life. And it's kind of a blessing in disguise. But in the face of those challenges and adversities, what are you going to do? You're going to get more entangled in this dependency bond, or are you going to go on a journey and really, take the time to look at the root of where that's coming from? Because the body will create dis-ease when it's not in alignment with truth. And the body is basically saying, I'm showing you these symptoms so that you can get closer to yourself and actually heal. It's a healing crisis to help you to heal and transform. And it's not easy to do in a world that, takes us down a different road that seems to help. And not to say that there aren't amazing doctors and amazing things that happen in the medical industry, but there has to be more attention on looking at the whole person and the root of things so that it doesn't come back, so that you're not just putting a Band-Aid on it. You're not just repairing it, but you're not getting deeper into the source at which, it's rooted from or where it came from.
I love the way you describe it, because as you do, Laura, I'm thinking about not only are we seeing this as an individual body, but as a planetary body. it too is going through, sort of its disease phase. And it too is being asked to look within. We are just microcosms of that big picture. And we happen to be, dealing with an individual crisis and a planetary crisis, but they're mirroring one another. So it's just interesting. Listen, we're running out of time because we have this is a shorter segment today because Laura has another meeting she's got to pick up on as soon as we finish up the after show. But Laura, I'm going to, first of all, did you mention a book? Did you mention a book? Has the book come out? Is it out?
Yes. Well, you can, you'll be able to order it from Amazon as a pre-order. But it's going to be available.
Hold it up so we can see it.
Be available March 1st. It's called Awakening the Truth Frequency.
I love it.
It's about my journey and the deep dive into the dark night of the soul and the underworlds in order to just, process and come to terms with a lot of the crazy things that came along my way, and just being born into this family and noticing just how much false narratives and false history has been cast upon us, how much we've been kept from our greater galactic history, and just, really encouraging people to take that deep plunge like I did.
Wow.
And so I kind of walk you through my own life journey while I, just share everything I learned along the way.
I love it. Congratulations. I know this has been a long time in the making. And I think I can shout out Brad Olson as being a little part of this as well.
Oh yeah. He's a huge part of it. Thank you. Thank you, Brad Olson. He's my publisher. And
that's great.
Just really so glad I did this with him.
I'm so glad you did too. And I remember long before it came out, I knew it was coming and I didn't know it happened. So yay. Congratulations, Laura. All right, listen, my friend, we're going to go next door. We're going to go to Patreon to the after show. Come on over, become a part of the member community, support Higher Journeys, and get a even deeper dive, a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the things that we're talking about right here. We're going to go over there. We're going to talk about some of the specific things that we can do to try to help to turn this paradigm, help to shift this paradigm a bit. So please join us over there. Laura, don't hang up. We're just going to keep moving, go next door, keep it going, and we hope to see you there. Laura, thank you so much. Don't leave. We're going next door. Thank you, you guys. Always enjoy having you tune in. Hope to see you next door. If not, we'll see you next time on Higher Journeys. Bye.